Welcome to Between Two Chairs, Demystifying Commercial Real Estate, the podcast that brings you the latest insights and trends on the South Florida commercial real estate market, with your hosts, Fernando Arencibia Jr. and Jennifer Woolman. In each episode, we dive into the world of commercial real estate and break down complex concepts to make them accessible for everyone. Whether you're a real estate professional, a curious investor, or just interested in the South Florida market in general, Between Two Chairs is the podcast for you. So pull up a chair and join us.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Between Two Chairs. My name is Fernando Arencibia Jr., and with me, as always, is Mrs. Worldwide, Jennifer Woolman. Jennifer, say hi.
Hello. You never cease to amaze me with what you come up with. Don't let Pitbull know that I'm business.
No, listen. Yeah. Run for his money. That's what you're going to do. So, Jennifer, today we have a very special guest. We'd love for you to introduce Mr. Bob Gillespie.
We do. So Bob Gillespie is the managing partner of Reach Commercial at Second Century Ventures, which is NAR's, for lack of a better word, PropTech incubator. And Reach has programs in the United States, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Israel, Latin America, United Kingdom, and Middle East. But today, even though we're going to ask Bob to touch on each of those, because after all, we are the international capital of the world here in Miami, or at least we like to believe so. We're going to focus mostly on the United States and the commercial companies that Reach has helped launch and continues to assist with. And these companies, I'm going to let you describe what these companies do for brokers and real estate, et cetera. But before we jump into Reach itself, can you give us some background on yourself, where you're from, how you ended up where you did, and I guess your favorite part of the job?
Sure. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. Good to see you guys. Good to see you again. I've known Jennifer for probably 10 years, and I see Fernando at all the events. So good to see you guys. Thanks for having me on. So yeah, I'll try not to make my background last too long. I basically started out as a computer science guy. Getting out of college, I majored in computer science. I wrote code for about 10, 11 years, had some successes, and eventually was doing consulting and would be working on problems, and companies that had issues would come in with tech and fix that stuff. And this is like, 90 to 2001. So I was one of the earlier people in companies want to use computers to do stuff. And then Bob knows how to make the computer do things. So let's hire Bob. Kind of simply how I started. And then in 2001, a guy who knew a friend of mine was complaining that he had a startup, because now startups were starting to be a thing like in the late 90s with the dot-com bubble. And he had launched a business that should have been successful, and it was going terribly. And my friend was like, well, I think Bob kind of does that. I think he does stuff like that. So the guy called me and was asking me, can you dig into my company and find out what my problem is? And I'm like, sure, a friend of a friend. So I spent some time digging into his company. And, sort of wrote up like, okay, here's your problems. Here's the things you're being told are a problem that aren't. Here's things that are a problem that you can maybe ignore for a while. And here's the things you got to fix right away. So I kind of bucketed them. And then I said, 30 days, you got to fix this. Then 90, then what? I laid out a whole game plan. And I just thought I was helping a guy out. And then he called me after that, and he goes, this is, because I'm kind of a crazy person and I really dig into things. And he's like, I like what you wrote. Will you please come and I'm going to hire you as my chief operating officer, and I want you to implement this. And I was like, okay, sure. So that was kind of my launch from being a tech guy to being a startup guy. Was I took over a kind of a failing startup, and then I hired a bunch of smart people, because I think I'm pretty good at surrounding myself with good people. And we just turned it around, and we took it from like $1.5 million of revenue to 10 in about 2 years, hemorrhaging money to making a bunch of money. So then I knew I could run companies. I knew I could do it. So that was kind of my this is what I'm going to do now, is I'm going to run companies. So then I left there, and then I started my own company from scratch, and that did very well. We grew very quickly, did really good. I think we ended up doing over $100 million of revenue. And then I started a third company and sold that one pretty quickly. And then we sold that again. And then we took that whole thing, we sold that again as I was a board member. I had kind of done the entire life cycle of being a startup guy. And then I knew that I wanted to be in that world, but I didn't want to start another company because it's exhausting. Being a CEO or, exec at a startup is both the best and worst job you'll ever have in your life. So I had an opportunity to get into venture capital. So a friend of mine is a Turkish American guy. So we went to Istanbul for a couple of years and we launched a sort of a micro venture fund there. We invested in some companies, one did really well. And then I came back to the States. And this is when we met Jennifer. There was a place called Elm Spring, which was a kind of a really early stage PropTech accelerator in Chicago. And they were looking for a managing director there. And they knew me. And because I do a lot of talks on real geeky stuff. I do things about like your cash flow modeling and your financial models and your projections. And I do things about cap tables and term sheets, all the dorky stuff about startups. I love that stuff. So I have a series of talks that I do. I was doing those talks. They were really highly rated by that program, apparently. So they asked me if I would come in and run that. So I did that for 3 years, made some really, really good investments there, started to kind of really understand how to dig into technology and companies and solutions from the investment angle. And then Second Century Ventures, as you mentioned, is the strategic venture arm of the National Association of Realtors. They were looking to expand their programs, and they were only doing a residential focused program. So at first, they were only doing a program that focused on real estate technology that had to do with the residential transaction. They wanted to launch a commercial transaction accelerator. And they knew me because I was a Chicago guy. They're from Chicago. NAR is headquartered there. So they knew who I was and they came and said, would you be interested if we would buy Elm Spring and bring you in and have you run our Reach commercial program? So we did. Now I've been there. This is my 8th year there. And I invest in real estate technology companies with a focus on commercial assets. So that's kind of how I got here. I would say I tell young people this when they ask me how I got to where I was. I don't know if I ever really had a plan, not like a real plan. I just knew like, if I take this role that's interesting to me and I dig in and I'm good at it and I become valuable, the next thing will appear to me, right? I'll learn more and then I'll go, oh, and now I can go here with that. Or now I met this group of guys and they're going to do a thing and I can go do that with them. So I don't think I ever had a plan. I always knew my plan was forward and up, but I didn't really know where I wanted to go. I kind of just thought, let's be really good where I'm at and let's see what sort of presents itself. And I kind of stumbled isn't the right word. Maybe walked briskly towards where I am now, but I never really kind of knew where I was going. But I always kind of got to the next thing I found really intriguing and challenging and interesting. So I've been pretty happy with where I'm at.
I love that. Just take a role that's interesting, dig in, learn more, and then the next opportunity will present itself. I am not a planner, but I know just about everybody says you have to have goals, you have to have a plan, you have to be thinking about where you want to be and how you're going to get there. And I love the fact that you just proved that not everybody has a very specific plan, and sometimes just doing what you're currently doing extremely well will lead you to where you need to be. So thank you for that insight. I really appreciate it. So I love a lot of the companies that Reach has helped. Tell us a little bit about what the goal of Reach is for the association members, the commercial practitioners, as well as for the companies themselves. I know that's two kind of different directions, but they feed off each other.
Sure. And they really align with kind of helping everybody. So really way back in the late aughts, so 2008, 2009, something like that, NAR decided, I think really smartly, that one of our slogans is not built here. So we weren't going to become a tech. NAR, this is before my time, but they made a smart strategic decision that they weren't going to become a tech builder. And they weren't going to build product and they weren't going to try to, kind of be entrepreneurial. But they wanted to provide that knowledge and tools to their membership. So under that kind of guise of not built here, they said, well, why don't we go source really good tech and find it? And then let's turn it on to our membership and say, hey, here's a problem that you have as a member or just as a professional. And we're going to go find best in breed solutions. And we're going to make those available to you. Well, great. That's very cool. And then somebody thought, well, what if we also support those technology companies with some venture dollars and let them grow and expand? Because if we're going to, for example, we've got 1.5 million members in AR. We want to give you those 1.5 million members as a customer. Well, they might need money to build the infrastructure, to build the product, to be able to support that amount of customer base. So kind of the three parties win. One, we try to find incredible solutions that our membership can take advantage of, and that is industry changing for everybody. A great example would be DocuSign. We were one of the really early investors in DocuSign. Everybody does digital signature. It's an incredible solution. Imagine how much time it saves everybody not having to go to the close and the docs and all the stuff, right? And another one, we're in proof now too, which is the digital notary. Remember, you got to find a notary and you got to drive to somebody's house and they got to find their stamp and it's in some drawer that they can't find. Or you got to go to the bank and then the notary's not there and then you got to come back and tonight. So we've invested in online notary. Those are solutions that are really, really helpful to members. And then also we help the company by putting dollars into them. And then we get the benefit of having invested. And then when they sell and exit, then we hopefully have a positive, return on our investment. So there's sort of the three masters that we're serving. One is, we got to make money as a venture firm. Two, we want to help our companies go faster through both money, mentoring, connections, all of the scope that we have inside of NAR, all the people that we know. Jennifer, you've served as a mentor you've met with several of our companies to be like, okay, you've got the solution, you're thinking about it that way, but as a practitioner, I don't think about it that way. You're telling me here's a problem that I have, but I don't really perceive that. But if you think about it this way, does it work better? Like you've done that to help the companies better understand, how to win. And then we're able to take those solutions and, plug them into our membership and make their lives, what we all want to have professionally: cheaper, faster, better, smarter, all of those things where they go, oh, wow, look at this incredible tool that I get to use. So that's sort of our goal of what we're trying to accomplish, sort of on a macro level.
And so when you come into this enterprise and they've already done so much investing on the residential side of the business, what was your perception of the commercial real estate market? Do you think that commercial real estate has lagged residential in technology adoption?
That's a great question, Fernando. And I think about that a lot. And I think it lags it a little bit, but I think that's just because it's more institutional. The big players that you want to get in with are going to be much larger. The residential has much more independent or smaller brokerages, not as big a teams, not as big as, they don't have your big CBRE, JLL, Cushwake. Like those aren't really, there's a couple of really big resis, but not quite the same structure as commercial. And then the other thing that I think so that was one thing that I had to realize was that the sales cycles are going to be long, right? When you want to sell into into commercial. And then I think the other thing that we learned pretty quick, like I said, I've graduated 7 classes. We made 54 investments. I would say that early on, we tried to be broker focused in the solution sets that we picked because of NAR with all the brokers. And then I think over time, what we realized it pretty quickly was we need to expand our field of vision, and we need to invest in things that don't just serve the broker, but we need to use, if we're going to double down on our NAR connections, we need to also get solutions that deal with the owner operator, with the multifamily housing, with the develop, with people that buy land, all the core assets, and not just the broker transaction piece, but really from I am an owner operator and I'm thinking about buying some land and what can I develop on it? What's the zoning and what's going on in my area? I'm thinking about building 3 gas stations. Where are there other gas stations and where are other people already developing other gas stations? So site selection, underwriting, the loan, the transaction, the deal room that the transaction uses, the close, the shuffle of the money. Then when the asset's owned, then the operating of the asset, the management of the asset, the finance of the asset, the amenities of multifamily housing or office, tenant screening, rent collection, rent cash back. Like we decided that we couldn't just be broker facing because the world wasn't big enough in commercial. So we've really, we except for construction, we don't do a lot of construction stuff. So I think that's almost like one step away from the rest of all of that. But we really kind of touch any part of the asset life cycle. And so it sort of broadened our scope in the kind of companies that we invested in instead of just being broker facing. That was a big thing that we learned in commercial is it's not a big enough universe to just invest in a broker facing solution.
I love that. And a lot of the companies that we've seen and we've used are very specific to an owner user type. Otso comes to mind for our lease tenants. Then I remember Lula Fit and I believe Cove were very multifamily focused and how you engage communities and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about some of the specific companies and and how they help an owner, user, and or the broker rep.
Yeah, I always feel guilty about this. I have 42 active companies. Which ones do I give airtime to?
Don't feel guilty. We're going to list all of them and provide a link, and we're going to be interviewing a bunch of them. So you're good.
Terrific. So I'll because you gave me a couple of them. I'll talk about Cove. Adam and George were the co-founders there, and what they realized was, particularly for office, what they realized was that there were disparate systems that did things that helped the asset owner manage that property. So from like entering a ticket that something's messed up to measuring where people go and how it's used and getting rooms signed up and access and all that stuff. That's one sort of point solution. And then owner operators were cobbling together like 3 or 4 different solutions to handle that side. And then on the tenant engagement side, they had maybe 2 other solutions that were handling the tenant engagement. So you want to book a room, you need access here, you need to submit a ticket, whatever it might be, that there were like maybe an owner operator might cobble together 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 solutions to handle all of the things that had to do with your owner and tenant experience and all the things that you need to do around that. So like I said, both sort of problematic, we need to deal with it, versus an amenity. How do we handle all that? So Cove went and built a single app that does all of it. And it's really just go to the owner operator and go, hey, what are you doing right now? Oh, we have ABC for this, and we use company D for that, and company E for that, and then they go, yeah, we do all that. And we can also roll it out and get it all to your people, and you're all set. The onboarding is really, really quick and tight. So that's one that we invested in. Funny enough, we invested in that in COVID. So we invested in, that was oh boy, that was fun to pick companies when nobody's in buildings. When you're in real estate technology and there's nobody in buildings and you're investing in Cove, you got to be dumb, lucky, or smart, one of the 3. But I just really believed in Adam. And then right when we made the investment, then the world shut down and there's nobody in buildings. So, Adam did an incredible job, Adam and George, just keeping that business alive and during when nobody was in buildings. But they recently, had an event where they had a bunch of their company absorbed, and now they are really scaling with the new partner that invested even more in them. So that's an example of one that was really, really good for us. You mentioned LulaFit. They're now called Playbook. So Playbook, Colleen Werner is the CEO there. She's a killer. She's awesome.
She's awesome.
She's great. So what they do, and again, this is sort of an amenity, is in a lot of commercial space. For instance, you might put in a gym, for example, in a big office building, but you're just an owner operator. You're not a gym owner operator. That's not your business. So underutilized or real estate that you want to use better, Playbook comes in and they essentially give you the playbook, and they can staff it. They have tech around it, and they can be like, great, now we can manage your gym. We can manage events. We can manage lunches. We can manage any amenity inside of your building. And then they can bring in yoga instructors and spin class. And then basically they give you why they call themselves Playbook. They give you the playbook to manage your amenities and take that off your plate to make that amenity much more rich and usable. So they've scaled very, very, very quickly. And then another one that I'll give you just because this happened, I think it was just last summer. We were in a company called OB Risk, OB Insurance. That's OBIE Insurance. And sure, for your commercial practitioners, insuring a commercial asset is a giant train wreck, and getting that thing underwritten and getting that done can be a 60-day slog. And OB essentially built a better mousetrap on the commercial side, where they could underwrite your insurance and get you a quote within days and not weeks and months. So when they crack that nut, that just does a lot of things. One, allows you to get your insurance quicker every single year. If you want to shop it, they're faster. But when you're closing a transaction, that's going to hold you up. Less friction inside the transaction where you're like, hey, have you taken care of your insurance yet? Oh yeah, Obi, man, they got us that letter that we're good. And it happened in 4 days. That was just such a no-brainer. So that's 2 really smart guys out of Chicago, Aaron and Ryan, and they sold that last year for an undisclosed sum, but a big giant exit of a wonderful company. Those guys just saw a big problem gap in the market and then just went and created a product that nobody else had. So those are the kind of things that we like. We like things that are cross-functional. We like things that scale and get big. And then we have broker stuff too. I'll just pick one because I talked the other day. We have LeaseUp is in our portfolio. Kurt Chisholm, Kurt's a great guy. He's out of Boston. Kurt built a platform specifically for tenant rep brokers, where when you're working with your potential tenant, you've got your CRM, but your books and your walkthroughs and your plans and the layouts and all the things contained in one system. And it's like just click, 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 drag, drag, drop. And it does. So a lot of things you sit pounding your emails and going to your Dropbox and going here and going there and getting the info and PDFs and all the mess that you got to do. They've created super smart, super slick, really cool broker facing tool that they roll out to brokerages. And Kurt's a deep thinker. Kurt thinks like very deeply about like, what does brokerage, 2.0 look like and what does the future of tech look like? So we've got solutions. I can't tell anybody, give me a problem with commercial real estate. I've probably got a solution that we've invested in, but that's a little smattering. And anybody who watches this, it's in my portfolio. I'm sorry I didn't mention you.
No, we're gonna put a link to all of the Reach commercial companies, and then just because AI is such a hot topic now, and I know you guys just closed your applications for the 2026 class, and those are going to be announced, I believe, in June sometime.
July 22nd will launch. Yep.
Okay, so without disclosing that, are you seeing a lot of AI companies more so this year than previously, and what AI type solutions does Reach have for commercial, if any, so far?
Yeah, so this was the first year that we got deluged with everything's AI, and I'm a deal flow guy. Like I work my deal flow coming into a year where they're going to look at companies. I think last year I talked to 268 companies. I do half-hour calls. I did 268 of them last year. And then when you add that to all the other companies I talked to in the past that were still live, I had like 550 companies coming into my year, and we'll make 8 investments. So I'm going to whittle 8 from 550. So it's a process. We have invested in AI before because people were on the forefront of it. I'll give you one that I really liked. Was last year, a company called Predict AP, phenomenal company. They've been around for quite a while. And then the reason I'm going to mention them is I want to get into my thesis kind of on AI. What they do is you're a big you're a multi-building. You're a REIT and you own a ton of real estate. And then maybe your home office, you get an invoice for, I don't know, let's make it easy, for snow plowing. You get an invoice for snow plowing. That invoice just says snow plowing, 10 locations, and it's $6,000. And then somebody in your back office looks at that invoice and goes, oh yeah, I know who this is. And then they know how to code it and take that $6,000 and break it up to your different and allocate it to the proper properties, right? But if that person's not in, or that person retires, or that person's sick, or whatever happens, you lose all the institutional knowledge. And then somebody's like, I don't have any idea what this is or who this goes to. So Predict AP for years has trained up a model that then they work with you to go and learn your business. And then they learn how to code those invoices automatically. So the invoice comes in and automatically scoops it, scrapes it, codes it, gets it in your system without a human touching it. They've built a really, really nice business. They're growing, they're growing massively year over year. Smart, experienced team. We invested in them last year. And I would say last year I saw some AI, but it was pretty nascent. And then this year, not every single, but I would say 80% maybe of the companies that we saw, if they're not an AI solution, which many, many, many are, now people are telling me how they're starting to use AI, obviously, inside of the business. So for me, we're in such early innings of AI that we need to figure out what our thesis is in investing in it. And what I'm trying to do, and this is I've always been this way. When a new tech comes out and I get pounded by incoming, hey, we do this thing with this new tech, I tend to look at them and go, yeah, that's probably a thing, but there's like 15 of you and I'm not smart enough to pick which one of the 15 is going to make it. I'm just not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait, and I'm going to wait for the shakeout and sort of some aren't going to make it. And then I'm going to find the one that's sort of maybe making a little progress. And then I'm going to come in back. So I tend to be, slow is not the right word. I would say maybe cautious, or I try to let things shake out. So in AI, here's, I think, the good and the bad. One, you can spin up a product really quick that says, what I do is I ingest all of your broker. I'll give you an example. I can take all of your stuff that you have and all of your data, and I can create actionable insights for you. And I can tell you this lease is coming up and you should call this guy. Here's a cold lead that you could reach out, and I can even reach out for you and make it a warm lead, right? Anything you can do relatively simple with AI. Is that a thing, and is that valuable to be able to do that? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Nurture leads, inbound email you can reply to, you can create a call, you can pull comps, all AI can do all. And what I'll hear is, Bob, it's going so good. I built a thing and it's so amazing. I built it in 4 weeks and we already have 2 customers and they're paying me. And now I'm going to go get everybody. And I'm like, okay, good for you. But if you can do it in 4 weeks, how defensible is what you're doing? Like there's 5 of you that spun up a thing in 4 weeks and have 2 brokers. Like there's 50 of you guys that did that, right? The barrier to entry is so low that then you're asking yourself a different question as an investor. You're not saying, is this a viable thing that will work? You're saying, yeah, it's a viable thing that will work, but there's going to be 1,000 of these and it's not defensible. And who's going to win? And why would I bet on something so early when we know that if you built the thing that worked, efficient markets are going to fill the market with that, right? So what I tend to do is I tend to say, hey, great, man, that's terrific. Show me you can go get 5,000 brokers that'll pay you $100 a month or whatever, right? Show me 500 brokers at $100 a month. Now that's 50 grand a month. Okay, now you're making about $500,000 a year. And now you're like a real company, right? So what I've done so far in AI is the AI investments that I've made have been like not just wrappers on data that pull stuff out and, sort of LLM wrapper stuff, because those are just easy to spin up. I like Predict AP, where it's an embedded workflow, critical, takes a couple of years you're never going to rip that out if it works good. You're never going to, the switching costs are high. Like if I'm going to do AI, I don't want the one that gets spun up in 4 weeks. I want the one that's been doing it for 3 years and they got such a giant lead on everybody that as the tools improve that they're like, yeah, I'm still three years behind Profia or Predict AP. Those are the 2 that I took last year that are, I think I took Profia 2 years ago. They're AI lease abstraction and they're unbelievable. So that's kind of how I look at AI and and I think AI is the most important technology since this thing, right? Since our phone. It is the most important thing since that. Maybe more important eventually. But I tend to take a cautious approach with new tech because I just don't understand how you pick winners and things that get you ROI when a competitor can spin something up in 4 weeks. I think you got to build like a product just like you always have and make it defensible and ingrained. And the switching costs are high and you're sticky. And, just like any other business, I kind of look at it the same way. It just happens a lot faster now.
It's so interesting because I have a group of friends and we're all getting into vibe coding and we're all getting into creating these things that we've had in our mind. And the reality is that we're so early, but I love the fact that you said that because we always say that to each other. Like if we could do this, then this is replicable and somebody who maybe has more technical knowledge than us is going to do it better, it's going to do it faster, it's going to know what to tweak. The flip side to the points that you're making in regards to looking at AI, companies, then when you're looking at companies that are not using AI, right? The new tech companies that are being pitched to you, are you also thinking along the lines like, well, I think AI can replicate this, even though you're not utilizing? I mean, to a degree, has the advent of AI made it much more difficult to make those decisions for you?
Yeah, I mean, yes, because I think, I don't know if you guys follow this as much, but there's like, the death of SaaS is coming, the death of software as a service is coming because of AI is going to eat their lunch and all that. And in the markets, you see some of it where I just read an article the other day where ServiceNow, which is like they do your payroll and they do benefits and they do all that kind of stuff that, their stock's been getting pounded lately. And people think, oh, that's because AI is going to go replace them. And then the public markets react to that and they, kick the crap out of it. CrowdStrike, although I saw today CrowdStrike spiked way up, but CrowdStrike, the cybersecurity thing, their stock got pounded pretty good as people thought, well, AI is going to replace what they do. Well, okay. I think to your point, Fernando, what those bigger companies will do is that they're going to embrace AI and they're going to figure out how to embed AI and then they're going to be just fine. I think having the death knell of Amazon telling me that AI is going to eat up Amazon to me is silly. So yes, to your point, like the vibe coding and I can create a thing, that means it's repeatable by anybody else. And then the legacy companies that you have, when you talk to them, you got to be asking them, hey, what are you doing to keep up? Like what, if you took 3 years prior to AI to build a thing, and now somebody with AI can come and catch up to you in a month, yeah, you're in trouble, right? But then if you've got a comparable solution set, 3 years, you should be ahead. You should be. Also, then you've got to look at different differentiators. You got to look at, do we have an unfair go-to-market strategy? Do we have long-term contracts? Do we have enterprise contracts? Can we scale faster? Do we have better relationships? Do we have strategic partnerships? Like, then it becomes less about the tech and more about selling and the relationships and partnerships and distribution and differentiators. I sort of thought this over this has been sort of an evolving thing for me in my head for the last 20 years. I think that any technology eventually becomes a commodity. And then the playing field is level. So when building management systems were probably threatened by IoT, right? Then they just integrated with IoT, and then Siemens and Johnson Controls, they're just fine. They're good. They just piggyback the IoT on top of it. And then when IoT became a thing, and everybody told me, "Oh, we're so differentiated. We have IoT," and then I'm like, "Yeah, but there's 10 of them. I'm looking at 10 of them right now. How are you differentiated?" And they're like, "Well, we have our own devices." And somebody else would say, "Well, we don't have our own devices. We use anybody's devices." So they would tell me that, like, two sides would tell me that theirs was better because of the exact opposite reason. And really what happened is IoT is just a commodity now. Just go buy a sensor and stick it somewhere and collect data and do something with it. Like, it doesn't matter that it's IoT. It's what you do with it. And anybody can do IoT. Anybody can. I think AI will become that way. Anybody can create a company with AI, and then we just get right back to where we are now, which isn't I'm AI, because everybody's an AI. Once you built your product and AI is embedded, it'll be embedded everywhere. It's just a commodity. And now it turns into, are you better at distribution? Are you better at sales? Are you better at listening to your customer? Are you better at retention? Are you defensible? And all those things that have always been true about business will continue to hold true.
Bob, you have such a unique perspective just because you were a practitioner, you ran a company, you did a startup, so it's incredible that Second Century Ventures has this dynamic personality such as yourself with the experience to be able to look at all of these, and handle 500 companies a year. One of the things that really struck me when you were mentioning these three companies is you mentioned the name of the founder, and you clearly have a relationship with the founder. And so I want to ask you a question that maybe is a two-parter. You've seen hundreds of startup pitch ideas. What are the biggest reasons why real estate technology companies fail, and how significant is the founder to that paradigm or that dynamic?
Yeah, and I'm actually going to answer them in reverse order, because I think that the first one ties to the second one really well, and they're great questions, and I get these a lot. So for real estate, they say there's three important things, right? Location, location, location. You could say the most important thing about a company is founder, founder, founder. You could probably say that. I think that probably, well, I know this for sure. If you pitch me a crappy founder with a great idea, or you give me a great founder with an idea that's not quite fully baked yet, I'm going to take the good founder every time, because I have had experience with great founders who I just go, well, they're just going to figure it out, man. Like, this isn't quite right yet, but they got something there. Otso, you mentioned Otso earlier, Josh and Marissa there. They were really, really early when we took them. I think their product was still being built, and they pivoted a couple of times. Now they've got it locked in. They know what they're doing. They're great. But Josh and Marissa, I was just like, these two are going to figure it out. Like, I'm not sure if the first product was the right product, but I just know that Josh and Marissa are going to figure it out, and they have. So founders are super important, and we've got incredible founders. The other thing, Jennifer knows this, I take female foundership in commercial real estate pretty seriously. Like, a lot of commercial real estate's, middle-aged white guys like me, just is. That's just how the industry's grown up. And, you go to an event, you look around a commercial event, it's a ton of 50-year-old white guys. And I'm not saying that's bad, because I'm one of those guys. But I've found that when I find a good female founder in commercial real estate, that woman is so tough, and they are so resilient, and they work so hard, and they're competing, that if I would run my metrics on companies that have done really, really well, my women founders outperform on a percentage basis, certainly, for sure. So I love to find female founders in commercial real estate, because they're just tough and resilient. They figure it out.
Bob, you're giving away my secrets. Okay, now everybody knows why I'm following these coattails.
It works for sure. It really, really, really works.
So I love what you said, and just because the Kentucky Derby was just run in May, on May 2nd, and a woman, the first time that a woman trainer won. In commercial real estate, when we're looking at syndications and stuff, we always say we bet on the jockey. So I think that's kind of your point with the founders as well. Bet on the founder. That's awesome.
You also want them to be smart, tough, resilient. Another big thing is you want to be coachable, and maybe not coachable where I know everything and I'm going to teach it to you, but like, not be set in your ways where it's your way or the highway. And if I come to you and say, hey, maybe try this, try that you just know better. And because if you're doing that with me, then you're doing that with your people, you're doing that with your customer. You're not listening to anybody. You're not bringing. So being amenable to feedback, I guess, right? I think is a really big one as well. And then to your second question, Fernando, when do they fail? They fail. Give you two answers on that. One, any company in any industry fails for one primary reason: failure to gain traction in the marketplace. And that's it. And I don't care if you're doing food and beverage, if you created a new snack bar, it doesn't matter what you do or what your vertical is. The reason your company failed isn't because you ran out of money. It isn't because you couldn't build the tech. It isn't because you couldn't hire a salesperson. No, your business failed because you didn't get enough traction. It didn't get enough people paying you. Because if you had that, then you wouldn't run out of money and you could raise more. You could hire more people. You could build more tech. Like it all, customers solve all problems, right? So that's sort of the macro, like startup 101 is companies fail because they don't get traction. And that's it. Don't give me any other bullshit excuse about why your company failed. You built the thing and nobody cared. And then get in particular to drill down a little bit in PropTech, why do companies fail? Obviously, lack of traction. But another one is they build a solution that's too small and it's a point solution. So they might say to me, I'll say, who's your ideal customer profile? And I'll make this ridiculous. They'll say, my ideal customer profile is a broker in Miami who's between the ages of 22 and 35 with sort of like silvery hair who have a dog. And we're going to charge them for our platform for $20 a month. And I'm like, okay, that's an impossible way to make a living. You're a point solution with too small of a market. If you get every single person that you just described, how big is that market? It's just not big enough. So I kind of made it a silly story, but I think for me, a point solution to brokers where you're going to try to give a broker a solution and tell them that it's $15 a month. I don't understand how that business gets big. Like, I just don't understand how I'm not saying you can't create a nice little lifestyle business and maybe you can make some money, but it's not venturable. Like, I can't invest in that. I can't give you $500,000 because that business that's never a $50 million business because your market's not big enough. So you can tell me, well, that's just the spear in. And then once we get in, then we're going to do this and we got this product and we do this and we roll out and we blah, blah, blah. And that's fine. But I think a lot of times by the time you get there, the tip of the spear wasn't big enough. The sales cycles were too long. You didn't charge enough. You run out of money. And like, for me, it's always like the point solution with a small market where you built a little niche tool that doesn't scale and grow. And then you kind of get trapped in this, well, we're doing a couple $100,000 of revenue, but it's not enough to pay our salaries. And now we got to raise money. And then a VC gives it to you and then you blow through that and you still don't have enough market share. And that's a real big one, is just lack of adoption, lack of addressable market. Selling broker stuff for $14 a month is a really, really, really hard way to make it.
Just as a follow-up on your number one reason they fail, which is that they failed to get traction. Have you seen companies that had a great idea and the reason they failed to get traction was because of their execution or their promotion or their messaging? Or is the majority of it just their idea doesn't resonate with the market?
Yeah, and boy, Jennifer, if I could look into the future before I make these investments and know that was going to happen, that would be excellent. I think all of the above. I think the reason that happens sometimes is there's like a slide from like 20 years ago that I like. And it says, when you're building a company, do this. And it starts out with like a skateboard. And then there's like a scooter. And then there's like a moped. And then there's a motorcycle. And then there's a car. And then there's a plane. And they just show like, build this, do this. Don't do this. And then they just show like a Ferrari, right? Because a lot of times what people do, and I have examples of this in companies that I didn't invest in, but we need $10 million to build a product. And then we're going to take it to market. Okay, you're doing it wrong. Like how about you take, $500,000 or call your friends and family and build a little thing and then take it to your customers and go, hey, am I on the right track? And then, but if you take $10 million and build a thing, you probably blew $5 million on functionality that nobody is ever going to care about. You didn't interview your customer. You never talked to your customer. And then and another reason that they'll fail when they go to market is that they'll say, hey, Jennifer and Fernando, you guys are brokers. And here's your problem that I'm fixing, and I fixed it. And then you stare at that person and go, that's not my problem at all. Like, that's not even a problem for me. Like, you told me that's a problem. You're solving a problem that I don't even think I had. So like, those never get bought. The other one will be anybody tells me that they're going to replace, hey, we're going to be an online store for books. Okay, somebody's doing that pretty good already. Like, don't tell me you're going to come and that you're going to kick Amazon's ass. Just don't tell me that, because I'm just not interested. So that happens is when you're going to take on a big entrenched incumbent where the switching costs are entirely too high and you're not positioned to do that. Or another one you'll get all the time is, I built this thing and I don't have any competitors. Okay, get out of my office. Like, get out of my office right now. Like, don't talk to me about that. You don't know enough about what you're doing. And I can probably name 5 competitors. I'll give you a silly example of how I answer that one when somebody tells me they have no competitors. But let's pretend that before the car, right? They said, I don't have any competitors. Car, we don't have any competitors. No, you have competitors. A horse is a competitor. It is. Because I don't need your car because I have a horse. Walking is a competitor. It is. Eventually, mopeds and motors. Any form of transportation is a competitor to transportation. Yeah, you've got a new subsegment of transportation. That's this car that's obviously going to be pretty successful. But, a dude who's been working on his farm for 40 years and he's got a mule and, that guy, well, he's going to buy it. Is he? Maybe he doesn't have enough money to buy it. Maybe the willingness to pay for your car. So it gets really complicated when you look at a competitive sets. And companies fail for a ton of reasons because they don't get adoption, either because of switching costs, competitive structure, pricing, willingness to pay, stickiness in commercial real estate in particular. Hey, man, this sounds like it's cool, but you know what? I own multifamily housing. I got one. Does it increase my NOI? Does it? Because if it doesn't, I don't care. I don't care about it at all. Yeah, but we have a logo and it's got a picture of a puppy on it. Isn't it cute? You should use this. Look how fun it is and your tenants are going to like it. And blah, blah, blah. Does it increase my NOI? If it doesn't, then get out of my office because I don't care. So there's a lot of that too, where like understanding what the market cares about and wants and then selling to that. I make it sound easy just because I've seen so much of it and I can talk philosophically about it, but it's also really, really hard to do.
No, undoubtedly. So Second Century Ventures is an independent arm of the National Association of Realtors. And I'm wondering, just because historically, it seems that associations have been, more reactive to technology than to foster innovation. So what do you see as the role of the realtor organizations play in fostering innovation rather than reacting to it, if any?
Great question. You guys are in Miami, and I'll give this lady kudos. Liz Sturrock, you guys know Liz? Yeah. I've worked very closely with Liz a bunch of times. And one thing about Miami in particular and Liz is that that association, the Miami Association, is so embracing of technology. Like they'll pilot things, they'll try things, they'll give things a trial run, they'll embed things in their MLS. They'll do that. Like Miami does a phenomenal job of embracing technology. Liz will even send me stuff that I haven't seen and be like, hey, Bob, I saw this thing. I think it's cool. I think it's a pretty good fit for you. Like, that's how forward looking they are. And, we have the San Diego Association. I've talked to those people. We have MLSs all over, or associations all over the country that have worked with our companies to embed tech. So what we do is we try to present that tech to the associations and say, hey, we think this is a differentiator for you. And, depending on where they are and how big they are and, how forward looking they are, I think that the associations have done 10 years ago, this wasn't true. But I think now there's a statistic that the 2 biggest industries for lack of adoption for technology are farming and real estate. Those are the 2 biggest ones. And I think that that's changed over the last 10 years. There used to be a graph that showed how lagging it was. But I think now that so many people have piled into the space that, there's so many more solutions. And I think that either they've embraced it or they get dragged kicking and screaming to the technology horizon, right? But I think that been involved with PropTech now for 11 years. I've seen a seismic shift in adoption, willing to trial, willing to pilot and look at things. But again, they're not adopting technology for technology's sake, right? There's that concept of the technology horizon, where the technology horizon is a finite but ever growing horizon, and you can approach that horizon. And then you've got the concept of early adopters, who are just the tech geeks, who are like, oh, you got a new thing and it might not work all that good. Super cool. I can put it in my pocket and it'll, beep when somebody calls me, like a beeper. Cool. I'll give that a shot. You've got those early adopters, and those are just the geeky tech heads that do stuff. I think that the real estate people are more across the chasm from those early adopters, and they're like, show me that it works and show me that it increases my NOI and I will buy it. But don't bring me something that's whiz-bangy and cool and flashy. I don't care. I think that's maybe the difference. We're not a high-tech industry that adopts technology for the sake that technology is cool. We're an industry that adopts technology and solutions because it moves the needle and makes us more money or faster or smarter or time or whatever it might be. I think that that's the big difference in our industry. It's the proof of the tech working, not, hey, look at this shiny new thing. I read this. I'll throw this in there and then I'll stop talking. I also need to take a drink because I've been running my mouth. I read this. I just read this. I think it was in Forbes. This was amazing. Because I have companies tell me all the time that they're piloting. Hey, I got a pilot with ABC company. And then once the pilot's done, they're going to roll it out to their entire portfolio and I'm going to have millions of dollars in revenue. And it sounds good to you, right? They're piloting, they're trying it. I read this yesterday by Forbes. And it's an article from, I think, April 20th. I can send it to you guys if you want. 95% of pilots don't prove enough to move forward with the pilot. 95%. That number blew my mind. If you would have had me guess prior to reading that, and I'm in the industry, I would have said, I don't know, probably 50% of pilots probably turn into a long-term. 95%. And in particular, it was in three spaces. HVAC efficiency, because you can have a big impact on costs. So that was one of them. The other one was like vendor management, vendor supply, operational, because that has a big, giant impact on your bottom line. And the third one was ESG monitoring. And a lot of that might be driven, statutorily, where you got to start to measure and you got to start to, with the New York law and things like that, California, where those pilots, they have to buy something, right? They have to. So those three areas were the ones that were getting a boatload of traction. That number just really surprised me that 95% of pilots don't move forward. I thought that was like an astounding number. So that again shows, yeah, we'll try stuff. We're not trying stuff because it's fun. We're trying stuff because it's going to have to work. And I think that's a big thing about real estate. Is it's not tech for tech's sake.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Is there, I'm just putting myself in your shoes, looking at so many different companies. And then, of course, you're working with the companies that you've invested, over the past few years. If you could fund, one idea tomorrow, what problem would you want to solve? I'm sure that's a very difficult question because you see so many things. But I'm wondering if there is something that the industry is ignoring, perhaps, in the, to innovate in.
Yeah, that's Fernando, there's so many ideas out there that it's hard for me to sort of be like, 10 years ago, I would have said package hand at multifamily, right? With that Amazon and all those. And then I had mentioned this before the show, but I lived in Chicago for 34 years. And then I moved to Texas for a year. And I just had an apartment there, after being a homeowner forever in Chicago. Being in a multifamily building and ordering stuff and then going down to try to find my package. Oh, my God. Oh my God, what a nightmare. So 10 years ago, I would have said package handling. And I think that's still a problem. I don't think that there's a couple companies that I really like. I won't mention anybody because I'm looking at a couple right now. But I think that there's a couple that are doing really well. But I think that that's still a thing that doesn't have a best in breed sort of solution because it's hard. Packages and there's different ways to do it. There's last mile delivered. There's lockers. There's a room. There's make your doorman do it, right? So that's one that I still kind of see a lot of. And then if you would ask me, Bob, what's the perfect company, the perfect solution set that you're looking for? What does it do? And I would say it's critical path for the customer. AI probably does something smarter, faster, quicker. It drives NOI and it scales quickly where you can go from, you want another customer? Great, you're turned on in 9 minutes. Not, well, yeah, we got one building and then it was pretty good. And then if you want to roll it out to 10 more buildings, it takes me a year and a half to do that. Like those are just too hard to scale. So, deeply embedded critical path, AI that scales like crazy. That's right down. And also and a giant addressable market, like a not a niche point solution. That's sort of the golden, like when I see those, I'm like, we're going to invest in this.
Bob, are you having fun?
Oh man, it's funny. I think I come across, I have energy.
You do.
It's funny that I talk about this stuff so much and I live it every day that I think I come across as people are like, oh, that guy knows a lot. And then inside of my brain, I'm like, God, am I boring?
No, not at all. I just love the energy and the passion. And, honestly, we talk about this all the time. When you mention those companies, you went directly to the human being that is running the show, right? And so how important relationships are and having that person there at the helm, that's what I gravitated to. It wasn't so much about the tech. And I really like the way that you phrased that if you might have a complete idea, but a not so leader, running the show, or you might have a great leader that doesn't fully have the idea, but you believe it's going to get there. And I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, and they mentioned this, and I think I've heard it before, that you hire attitude, you train skill. And I love that aspect of it, and the fact that at the end of the day, there are human beings that are running this show, and that is still an incredibly important component of success, whether it's in the tech world or in real estate or, in any other industry.
Yeah, and I'll just tell you kind of a funny story. So in our program at Reach Commercial, we take 8 companies a year, right? So I open my applications on February 1st, and then they apply. And then at the end of March, so that's 2 months, and I read all the applications, we score them, and then we do an interview, and then I do a follow-up call. And then if we make an offer, then I do an offer call. Then I have to work with that person for, working on the legal and all that stuff. So I have a few months of exposure to the company that I'm going to make an offer to. And we do our due diligence, and we look at their numbers and their documents. We make sure everything's on the up and up, make sure it's good. I said I made 54 investments. I've learned that people can kind of keep their shit together for about 3 months. That's about how long they can keep their shit together, which is about how long our process is. So I've had it where, and this has only happened to me maybe 3 times. And I've invested in 54 here. And then at Elm Spring, I managed another 32. So what's that, 86 investments that I've made? And I would say 4 times. So it's about the 5% rule, where people can keep their shit together for about 3 months. And then the 5%, then literally they'll come to kickoff, and I'll meet them for the first time. And I'll be like, oh, God damn it. Oh, I missed on this one. Oh. It's only happened 4 times in like 12 years of doing this.
That's a pretty good track record.
Yeah,
it is. I don't think a lot of people have any negative track record on it, but where you just go, oh man, like no matter what we do, this isn't going to work. This guy's a dummy. Like no matter what we do, this isn't going to work. So luckily it happens very, very rarely, but it happens. So it happens for everybody in every industry when you hire somebody and then you're like, oh, this person's been here 3 months and this is going to be a nightmare. But the vast majority of the time, when people show up and I'm like, yeah, I knew this was going to go. And then you just see people flourish and grow and pivot and scale. And they go from being like these startup founders to being running, scaling, growing companies. And you see people grow into the CEO role and they start to acquire companies. And it's just amazing to see the growth. And, my personality, I have a hard time not fretting about the 5% because I'm just too competitive. But the 95% is really a joy. And working with these companies is really fun. And I tell people all the time, like, I do this because it's my profession, but I also, the reason I continue to do this and do what I do now is I love these founders become my friends. And, I'm an advisor, a mentor, a friend, an ally, a sounding board. The reason that I continue to do this and want to keep doing this for a while yet is the relationships that I built with the people to have success building something is really, really enriching and really fun. So that's kind of where I take joy from it. And that's why I have such passion, is because I take this seriously. Like I want people to be successful.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate everything that you do. We love so many of your companies and use them in our business, and we will be interviewing some more of them as we move forward. But I really, really appreciate you taking the time out. I know you're in the middle of finalizing the class of 2026, so we especially appreciate you taking out the time to share your insights with our listeners.
And I will get you guys the press release once released. You guys can post that, and your listeners can go back and see the trends that we picked this year. We'll have some really cool ones this year, pretty AI focused, but we're very close. Next week we'll pick our final 8 next week. So it'll be pretty exciting to figure out who we're going to have. And Jennifer, always a pleasure. Fernando, good to see you again. And I'm sure I'll see you guys at the events this year. Because once we get on the road, I'm at all the conferences and things that I see you guys all the time. So thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
We'll see you in DC. And for all of you listening, thank you once again for pulling up a chair and joining us on this special episode of Between Two Chairs. For Jennifer Woolman and myself.
You almost forgot your name.
I know. I almost forgot my name. I almost combined it. All is well. Goodbye.
Bye.